Who we got? Got Sylvie, Linda, we've got Carmel, we've got Dale, his fancy t-shirt. Got Mark Woodhouse, he's in the house. Got Frank out in the States. We've got Yvonne, Adrian Montano out in Romania, Liz Oliver, we've got Dan out in Farnham, Grant Foster out in Spain, Liz Martin, Sandra, James out in the out close to Glastonbury, aren't you? Simi, haven't seen you for a long time. Great to see you. Lisa Moore. Rob is here. That looks like Tim up in Nottingham. It is. Thought that was right. So, so welcome. What a week this has been, or what a 10 days this has been, to be honest with you. For all of our esoteric followers, watching the I spent the day watching the all the events of Monday from a esoteric and occult point of view, which was fascinating. Roger, how are you doing, Roger? So yeah, interesting, an interesting week. And then, you know, it's an interesting chapter, this one with just boot up my Remarkable again. Got my notes here about the brain. And about the brain being a radio. Well, you know, this is one of my my passions. I've got my radio here actually, because I am a radio ham. So I do transmit and receive, and I am into broadcasting and all those kind of things, which is what Napoleon Hill is talking about in this particular chapter. So, yeah, it just says like the brain is like a broadcasting station or a transceiver. So a transceiver is something that can both transmit and receive. And he says your brain's like that. And interestingly, he says it transmits via the ether. So let's talk about that. Because Maxwell Hertz was the person that's credited as discovering electromagnetic waves. That's Maxwell Hertz, which is why, you know, a while ago, it used to be kilocycles, megacycles. Then to credit Maxwell Hertz, they changed it to megahertz, kilohertz, all of those kind of things. So he discovered electromagnetic waves, which he was listening to that were coming from nature, from outer space. And but he got this idea about them being waves. And so sound is a wave, and sound travels through the air. Obviously, we've got waves in the sea, travels through the water. So Maxwell Hertz said, I've discovered these waves, and they must travel through something. You couldn't have the fact that there was these waves that weren't traveling through a particular medium. So the medium that he decided upon was the medium of ether. You know, you might have heard people say, well, it came to me out of the ether. The ether, if you spell it in Maxwell Hertz language, but also in Tesla was massively into this. There's an interesting book for you in my library, Occult Ether Physics, study of what Tesla was doing. They all believe that these waves came through the ether. Ether spelled E-T-H-E-R. But interestingly, if you looked at the ancient spiritual sciences, ancient spiritual technologies, then ether in the Greek was spelt with an A in front of it, A-E-T-H-E-R. And ether is the spirit element. I think we've already talked about that over these last few weeks. So it would be, I think I've actually put it up here on the flip chart. The spirit element in the Hawaiian perspective, the Huna perspective would be the Io, the Keawe. In the Hindu system, it would be the Akasha. And in the Greek system, it would be the ether. So interestingly, what we've got is a very interesting crossover between radio, electromagnetic waves, and the spiritual teachings of the planet. And Tesla discovered how to send and receive messages using electromagnetic waves through the ether. You know, when I was a kid, Marconi was taken as being the inventor of radio. But unfortunately, it was after Tesla died that was overturned. And so now Nikola Tesla is taken as being the inventor of radio and how to communicate using electromagnetic waves. But what Napoleon Hill is talking about in this book is that our brain is an electromagnetic transceiver. It can transmit and it can receive. And again, what we've got is the three minds. Which we talked about before. And the fact that they're connected this way, the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the higher self. Whereas what Napoleon Hill calls the finite mind, creative intelligence, what he calls the subconscious mind, and infinite intelligence, which in Huna we would say was the infinite intelligence, or the higher self, or Aumakua. So then I go a little bit, it's not that I don't agree with what he's saying. I think I've got some additional things. So I do agree that the unconscious mind, or what he calls creative intelligence, is the transmitter and the receiver of information from other people. Though how I would quantify that is more that it's one-on-one. Here's a, I'm sure it's a universal experience. You're there with your phone and somebody pops into your mind, the phone rings, and it's that person. Or in the days before mobile phones, where now it actually says who the person is, the phone rang and you knew it was before you called them. That is completely communication via the unconscious mind. So what the unconscious mind does is it connects us up with people in an electromagnetic way to all the people that we know. So they think of us because they're going to phone us. Electromagnetic energy travels our way. Our unconscious mind picks it up and brings that person up into your mind, and vice versa. So one-on-one communication, and what Napoleon Hill refers to as clairvoyance, or actually, let's hold off on clairvoyance for a second. Telepathy. Telepathy is the function of the unconscious mind, creative intelligence, because it's our unconscious mind which is aware and is connected with energy. Now, something that, well, there's a number of things here. Let me just talk about infinite intelligence and the higher self for a second. This is kind of like one-on-one. This is a bit like your phone, in that what you can do is you can dial into your phone and you can call somebody you know, and they can call you. So it's a very one-on-one relationship. Your higher self, because at the level of higher self, everything is one. With your higher self, you can pick up broadcasts from people that you don't know. In fact, you can pick up broadcasts from the entire population of the planet, if not even beyond that, if you want to entertain that idea. So how do we do that? So what Napoleon Hill talks about in the chapter is our own personal frequency determines how good we are at picking up communications from other people. And I thought it was very interesting in the chapter that he said that emotions raise the frequency. But he does actually say that both positive and negative emotions raise the frequency. So, you know, if we're feeling love, we'll pick up the broadcasts of love from other people around the world. If we're feeling hate, then we'll pick up the broadcasts of other people that are in the emotion of hate around the world. Again, interesting, I think, and this was a couple of sessions ago, he says the thing that raises your frequency more than anything else is the emotion of sex. That's how to raise your frequency more than anything else. That's how you become more able as a transmitter and more able as a receiver. And, you know, this is why I say this, which is I wouldn't say it goes against what Napoleon Hill says in the chapter. I think it's an additional thing, in that, if you remember, there's your higher self. Your higher self is in the spiritual body. Conscious mind, or what Napoleon Hill calls the finite mind, is in your mental body. The young mind, or creative intelligence, is in your emotional body. And then all of those minds call your physical body home. So you'll notice that your higher self lives in the spiritual body, which means your spiritual body is actually in the ether. It's in the Keave, it's in the Eo, it's in the Akasha. And once we connect with that mind, that aspect of ourselves, then we can actually then receive and transmit to everybody that we want to connect with at that level. So it's a little bit like, you know, with this little transceiver here, I can talk to one person at a time. With my shortwave radio that I've got upstairs, HF, I talk to one person at a time. I'm not really broadcasting. Your higher self is like a broadcast station. And it will transmit out, just like radio, to anybody who's listening. But it's one on many rather than like this, one on one. And I had a guy who worked for me as a salesperson. He was trained in Huna as well, because I trained him. So he knew how to do a higher self connection. And when he wasn't getting great sales, he would say, I'm going home and I'm going to do astral marketing. And what he did was he did a higher self connection and then asked his higher self to connect with all the other higher selves that wanted to do, that would be totally appropriate and totally okay, and totally in alignment with their spiritual alignment, to train with us. And he would go off one night, and then he'd come back the next day, and the phone would be ringing off the hook. And he called it astral marketing, which I think is quite an interesting term. Then we got some really interesting stuff, I think, from Napoleon Hill, considering the time when the book was written, which was, about, he said there's between 10 and 12 billion cells in the cortex of the brain, human brain. And he said, and they're also organized into structures, which he said, can't happen by chance. But if you want to research this on the internet, over the last 100, 200 years, there have been people that have lived a very successful life, very healthy life. And then when they died and there was an autopsy, what the pathologist discovered was that they had no brain. They had no left or right hemisphere. But they functioned perfectly. They had a family, successful business, all of those kind of things. And a student of mine, actually, her uncle invented the MRI scanner. I think we've all heard of MRI scanners, but if I asked you who invented it, probably the majority of you wouldn't know. Well, it was this one particular student of mine's uncle who invented the MRI scanner. And when they built the first one, they wanted volunteers. And there was a medical researcher volunteered, and he had a MRI scan of his head. And what they discovered was that he had no left or right hemisphere. He had a brain on the head of the spinal column, but he had no left or right hemisphere, which is what takes up most of our head, cranial cavity, by the way. I just wondered, how did they break the news to him? I think you better sit down for this. You have no brains. But he's a medical researcher. He's obviously very, very highly intelligent. He function, all that kind of stuff. No left or right hemisphere. And the student of mine, actually, they've written a biography of her uncle, and she wanted to put in, because she remembered this day that her uncle showed up at her home when she was a little girl, so excited that they discovered this guy with no brains. and they had a D notice slapped on it, and they went, "You're not allowed to say this to anybody." And she wanted to publish it in the biography, and the D notice is still in place. They weren't allowed to publish anything about that because they said it would change people's ideas so much about where we think, because we think it's all in here, that people wouldn't be able to cope with it. So let's take it as a presupposition, unless you've got evidence that we do actually have a brain. I've never had an MRI scan, so I don't know whether I've got a brain or not. But I'm going to presuppose that I have. If we can function without a left or right hemisphere totally perfectly, what's it for? Is it a transmitting and receiving station, amongst other things? So that was my take on this this chapter, which is a relatively short chapter, but well, actually, it's a very short chapter compared to some of the other ones. Now, I know I'd had some questions come in beforehand from Roger, particularly. And Roger asked about a comment in the preface about two secrets. I've gone through the preface in my copy of the book, and I've also gone through the preface of that one, which is obviously the forerunner of Think and Grow Rich. I couldn't find it, Roger. Do you have it there? Just so.
Yeah. So can you hear me all right, David?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So that's the version I've got. Which okay. Is so it's been revised and expanded by Arthur R. Pell. So it's not the original, but then it's got two prefaces in it. It's got the author's preface to the original edition.
Yeah, that's the one I read.
Yeah, and somewhere in there now, you're going to challenge me, and I'm not going to waste everyone's time. But it basically said there is a secret, and it obviously he's not referring to the book The Secret, which we both, it's a completely separate thing. He says there is a secret and it has two parts, and then he says essentially you've already got one part and you're going to find the other part. Some people find it in the first chapter, some people find it at the end of the final chapter, but he doesn't actually declare what it is. Bit frustrating. So I just wondered whether you knew. So for example, if you take The Secret, the book, not that we're fans of it, I know, for all the reasons we've discussed, but at least you know that The Secret is essentially the law of attraction. It might be distorted, but he doesn't actually spell it out in here. So I just wondered if you had a take on it.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'll put some more videos up in the group actually, because obviously this week's been a lot about radio, and I've got 3 lectures that I did about radio frequency, electronics, and how it relates to esoterics and spirituality. So I'll put those in there, but I also did 7 or 8 videos on the Kybalion, and the law of attraction is one of 7 laws, which if you take it in isolation, it doesn't work. But you know, the whole idea of The Secret, the book, was based on this, which is why they invited Bob Proctor, because Bob Proctor, the late Bob Proctor, this was his Bible. I mean, you know, he built an entire industry, an entire business out of just Think and Grow Rich and going into in depth. So I can only really do a mind read, but two secrets for me. The two secrets, the two biggest secrets, really, I think, that are hidden from the majority of people are on these flip charts here. That would be one, which is why there's so many threes in religious architecture. And I was brought up in the Christian religion, but the religions have trinities in them. Let me just move my camera around a little bit. Now I've stood up. The religions have trinities in them. So, so in the religion I was brought up in, Christian religion, Church of England, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. I never asked why was it in that order, because surely it would go Son, Father, Holy Ghost, or Holy Ghost, Father, Son, not Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. But when you know this, it makes total sense. And that, I read Think and Grow Rich before I learned Huna. This is a core part of Huna. And it's in there, 1920s, 1930s. It's in there that the minds are connected this way. And then the 7 bodies. Just got to knock on the door. Just excuse me a second. Deliveries. Excuse me. So then, so we are taught today one mind. And we're taught one body. But we're not taught that we have these other bodies. So, what you've got here is, in actual fact, we haven't got 4 bodies. This would be an entire other masterclass, but it's actually in my Huna webinar. We have 7 bodies, which is also why you find so many 7s in religious architecture. So I think, if I was going to go, what are the 2 secrets that they might allude to in the book? It'd be that, and it would be that. I haven't got that copy of the book, Roger, so I'll get it, and so I'll have a read of it, see if I can pull more out of it. But
that's a terrific interpretation, though, David. Thanks for that. I'm just so it's on the numeral Roman numeral page 9, and I'll just read it just so.
Yeah, okay.
The secret to which I refer has been mentioned no fewer than 100 times throughout this book. It has not been directly named, for it seems to work more successfully when it is merely uncovered and left in sight, where those who are ready and searching for it may pick it up. That is why Mr. Carnegie tossed it to me so quietly without giving me its specific name, and somewhere else he goes on about two two parts, but that's essentially the wording that got me thinking.
Yeah, no, I think that would be my take on it.
Brilliant.
And then, you know, The Secret did take the law of attraction, which you just talk about in here. But the law of attraction originally appeared in the Kybalion. I'll put the videos up in the group tomorrow. And the law of attraction is just one of 7 Hermetic laws, which are also related to the bodies, the minds, and also, you know, when I did those videos, I suddenly realized how much there was a correspondence, which is the law of correspondence, between the 7 laws and radio frequency electronics, which is obviously something I've been trained in a lot. And so I did a set of Christmas lectures. So I'll put those up in the group as well. So you've got more things to watch.
Many thanks.
Cheers,
Great,
mate.
David.
Sally, we got other questions?
Yeah, Linda had a question for you.
Linda on the sofa. Can't hear you, Linda.
There we go.
Now I can.
Yes, I am on the sofa at the other end. My one is that inevitable one from me. How do premonitions fit in here? And I've had them since I was 9 and they've always been right. Usually about somebody that's close to me, obviously, and it's before something happens and then it happens.
Yeah. So premonitions would be more from the higher self. Were they also situations where potentially you had a premonition and as a result of that premonition, you could avert the person dying?
Yes, mostly.
Yeah. So each of the minds can't, what would be the right word for it? So the mind above cannot control the mind below.
Okay.
So you know, I think we've all had experiences that our conscious mind can't control our unconscious mind. Yep. Even though we wished it could. And equally, your higher self can't control your conscious mind or your unconscious mind, except in situations where a person might leave this earth plane earlier than they were meant to. Then the higher self can intervene.
Yeah.
And change situations and circumstances so that the person doesn't die.
Yeah. The perfect example is I had the premonition a month before my brother had a motorbike accident, and I was spot on, and the thing that alerted me to it was my connection. And then I tried my best to stop him getting on his motorbike and coming over here. And I thought I'd succeeded, and that was 10 o'clock in the morning. And then my niece rang me at 3:30 on the same day to say, I've got to tell you something, but don't worry too much. I said, I already know where, when, and how. And I was absolutely right. He had a nasty motorbike accident, was airlifted into Southampton.
And I'm presupposing from what you said that he didn't die.
No, exactly. Yes, he didn't die. So maybe it could have been worse than it was. I tried to stop him getting on his bike, which of course I couldn't do. But he went home and said, oh, I've gone to the bank in my car. He said, you're being really weird. Because I kept saying, no, don't drive over here on your bike. Just go to the bank and do what you have to do in your car. And so he was grumpy. Then he went home and he thought, oh, what the hell? He loves the drive over to here, which is about 22 miles. And he went anyway. when he got home, he got on the bike and went for a ride. And that's how he had the accident.
Right. But on the way to see you.
But not on the way to see me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you see these kind of stories a lot in the newspaper, don't you? There's been some major disaster, maybe it's an air disaster or terrorist or whatever it is. And there are people who've died. And then a couple of days later, you see these reports of, I was meant to be there.
Yeah.
My car wouldn't start. My train was late. Blah, 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 blah. And so that is direct intervention from higher self.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than unconscious mind.
Got it.
Because it's actually your higher self that can predict your future, because it's your higher self that's creating it.
Oh.
And so then what's the best way to predict the future? Create it the way you want it.
That takes a bit of understanding from that particular scenario.
Yeah, well, your higher self is perfect.
Yeah.
So therefore, with the law of perception is projection, your higher self perceives everything as perfect. So if your unconscious mind's going, I think I'm going to die, or if things keep going the way they are doing at the moment, I'm going to die, your higher self's going to go, perfect.
Yeah.
We'll create that. So that's where this thing, creative intelligence, is so important, because whatever your unconscious mind gives you, your higher self, it will create for you. I'm sure I said it in the earlier master's classes, when I was teaching out in Hawaii, and people would go like, oh, I asked my higher self whether I should move to Hawaii, and it said yes. It's not a good question, really, because if you said to your higher self, should have moved to Watford, it would say yes. Because everywhere's perfect.
Yeah.
But if you would ask a question, would moving to Hawaii be in alignment with my true spiritual purpose, then you might get a different answer. Would moving to Watford be in alignment with my true spiritual purpose? Apologies for people who live in Watford and like it.
Probably not.
But so that's the way the higher self works.
Okay, I'm struggling a bit with it. Sounds a bit like maybe I had something in my unconscious mind that was almost in fear of that happening, and I sort of created it, which is not an easy thing to think. It never crossed my mind. He's a bloody good bike rider, and I would never have imagined that happening.
No. So, equally, you wouldn't be able to override your brother's free will.
Yes.
With your unconscious mind either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah. I had the same with my mum, and I saved her life 4 times through these premonitions and got home in time. So it's been with me all of my life.
It's just a indication that you're in connection with in communication with the higher self.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So, your higher self will create whatever your unconscious mind gives it. So, in Huna, we've got these techniques called O'oku'u, which is to let go. which is where, for instance, we can have a person's higher self come down and take all of their anger away. In a similar way to timeline therapy.
Mm.
So why would your higher self be able to remove all of the anger? Because it put it there in the first place.
Mm.
So your higher self's the creator of your universe. So therefore, it can uncreate things and create things differently.
Yeah.
And, that's, referring back to Roger's question, that's a pretty big secret.
Mm.
That, not wanting to be conspiratorial, but that a lot of people wouldn't want the majority of people to know.
Yeah.
Because being connected with your higher self is true empowerment.
Mm.
And there's one problem with empowered people. They don't do what they're told.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not talking about you personally, Linda. But,
Oh, I'm getting all my life answers during this masterclass with you.
good. That was my intention.
Great.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes. It's a big thing. Yeah, as I've got older, I've understood it more, but it's always been right. And therefore I respect it. I was just not entirely sure where it was coming from. So I kind of get that now.
Yeah, I mean, you go like, it's right, but then and it might be that it's right, but you don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be right.
Yep.
I've had that a few times.
Mm. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Sally, any other questions?
Mark Woodhouse has a question for you.
Mark.
Sorry, did I, Sally? What was my question?
No, I removed it from your unconscious mind.
What was it, Sally?
Your question was, well, it was more a statement. I'm guessing the 7 minds relate directly to the chakras.
7 bodies. And yes, you're totally right. Yeah.
Mark did say mind, so.
Yeah, it's the seven bodies relate to the 7 chakras. Yes. Yeah, completely correct. And I've got a HUNA webinar, haven't I, Sally, that we sent out recently, which covers that.
Yes. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
I should say. And we did send it out.
Yeah. Can we put that up in the group?
Yeah.
Some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
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 Okay. And then Liz Oliver had a question.
No, it's okay. You've answered that. Thanks, Sally.
Okay. Sorry, Liz Martin had a question.
Yeah, hi David.
Hi, Liz.
I think I'm going back to the first one on perception as projection here, and that always was difficult for me. Are you saying then that our unconscious mind creates our world, that the higher self is God, that there's all sorts of things that I'm a bit confused and thinking about?
Right. Okay, let me go with that. So the way you could think about this, let me just change my camera angle a little bit. The way you can think about this is that your higher self is like a holographic projector that projects out this world, 3-dimensional holographic world that we live in, holographic universe. Because if you think about it, where does the world go? Where does the universe go when you fall asleep at night? Well, it disappears. And then you wake up in the morning and it reappears. But it disappears overnight, you know? So your higher self is like a holographic projector. So then what's the content of the holographic movie is the content of your unconscious mind. So you could think of this as being your unconscious mind being the movie, your higher self as being the projector, and your conscious mind as being kind of like the audience, the viewer of the movie. Which is why we've got perception as projection, because your conscious mind has this perception about what it's viewing, but it's actually a projection from inside of us, and the means of it from a Huna esoteric point of view is our higher self. So therefore, if we want to change the movie, that's where we need to go. Because your higher self will project whatever your unconscious mind gives it. You know, even if it's you're going like, but that's not what I want. As far as your higher self is concerned, you know, I've got a projector in here, but you know, if you've got a projector like I have in the physical training rooms, I can use that to project anything. I can use it to project a rom-com. I can use it to project a horror movie. And the projector that I use has no judgment about what it projects. It will project whatever I give it. And, you know, so the movie will be on my laptop. The projector will project whatever my laptop gives it, and my conscious mind goes, okay, I want to play this. So that's the kind of like relationship between the three. You know, big things that I experienced when I was working with veterans was that, you know, a lot of them had huge amounts of unresolved anger. And their experience was that the world was filled with people who had the sole intention of pissing them off. Even to the point where if they went into a bar, there's nobody else there, they'd still find somebody to pick a fight with. But when they let their anger go, using timeline therapy, all these people with the intention of pissing them off disappeared. How could they disappear? Because they weren't there in the first place.
Yeah, so in a sense, we do create
Oh, Liz,
the ultimate responsibility.
you broke up a little bit there, Liz. I didn't quite hear all of that. I don't know if that was me or you. So could you just repeat that one?
Probably me from Spain. We have ultimate responsibility then for our world. For creating, we create our own world.
Yes.
Yes.
We do. And again, you know, with the veterans, a lot of them had a lot of unresolved fear. And so they thought their perception was the world was a scary place, full of scary people. But when they let the fear go from here, the scary people disappeared. Well, how could they just disappear? Because they weren't there in the first place.
Yeah, that's really weird.
It is, And that's probably why I said to Roger earlier, that's probably one of the secrets that is actually in Think and Grow Rich. But it's so embedded that when I read that book first time, I didn't see it. Then I learned Huna, and then I read this again, to do this masterclass, and I'm going like, excuse my language, but I'm like, what the fuck? The three minds are in here. And I hadn't spotted it before. So yeah, I mean, so yes, we have. But you see, you used a word which I absolutely love. Responsibility. But let's put a space in the middle of the word responsibility. When you get this, you will have responsibility, which means you have the ability to respond. Where if you're not response able, there's nothing you can do because you're not responsive. Whereas when you're response able, then there's always something you can do about it. But yeah, ultimately, this is really what we're talking about here. This is the secret around the wow. I mean, it's a massive secret, because when you fully embrace it, it means that you can create your world, your universe, exactly the way that you want it. And then obviously, learning techniques like NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis, Huna, gives you the tools and techniques to be able to create it the way you want it. But in our hypnosis trainers training, we play around with hypnosis, obviously unconscious mind. And we've had people literally have other people disappear, so they can't see them. We've also had people have somebody appear that actually wasn't there physically, but their experience was that, yeah, which we like people to have let go of their fear first before they do that, because it would otherwise freak them out a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
That's a pleasure, Liz. Does that answer your question?
Well, more than answered it.
Okay, good.
Okay, I have a question from Adrian.
Okay.
Who's on a train, so he actually can't ask you directly.
Okay.
Would there be a reason your higher self would at a certain point not want to connect with you and give you answers when you ask it?
Not from the higher self, but from the unconscious mind. So the unconscious mind is the kind of like the go-between. So, and it's possible for the unconscious mind to perceive your higher self as being God. I mean, it is the creator, but it might perceive your higher self as being the God, depending on the values and belief systems you're brought up with, which might mean that your unconscious mind doesn't feel worthy to connect and communicate directly with God. This this is what religions teach us, which is why, you know, you've got to go to a religion, you've got to go to a priest, you've got to go to a vicar, you've got to go to ever to be your intermediary with God, because you're not worthy to speak with him personally, whereas actually the higher self is totally balanced male and female energy, so it's not a him or a her. And if you look in, well, actually, I'm using it to prop up my computer. I've got a transliteral Bible, which is a direct Old Testament direct translation from Hebrew and Aramaic, whereas the word for God actually is not as non-gender specific, and it's actually plural. But then, you know, obviously that got changed. So that could be, so the thing would be around, if you weren't getting answers from your higher self and not able to connect with your higher self, would be particularly around releasing emotions like fear, guilt, and also any limiting belief that your unconscious mind might have that makes it either that you're not worthy or it's not okay for you to communicate directly with what potentially your unconscious mind perceives as God, the creator. Your higher self is the creator of your universe, not everybody's universe, but your universe. And you know, I've certainly had situations where, well, what might we call it? It's belief installation, or we might call indoctrination, where that for you to have a personal relationship, one-on-one relationship with the creator of your universe is not okay. I think Adrian might have disappeared because he lost his connection, but hopefully he got that. He'll get it on the recording. Any other questions, Sally?
Okay. Lisa Moore has a question.
Lisa, where are you on my screen? Wave at me.
Right, here I am.
Oh, yes, okay. You just got green.
Okay, this is a strange one, but
Compared to
it's
what?
about, well, my understanding is that when the body dies, when someone dies, the body dies, but not the energy. So, based on what you've said about the energy and the transmitting, is it possible to still connect with the energy of a dead person?
Yes.
And can you, I mean, I'll tell you a personal experience of mine. When my mother died, they didn't have room to send her to the undertakers, so they had to put her in a vault. There were just so many people dying that they didn't have room, and they had to put her in a vault.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this, it's just something that came to me, and it was my mother saying, "It's so cold in here." And this was a few days later, and I phoned up and I said, "Well, have you moved my mother yet?" And they said, "No." I said, "Well, where is she?" And they said, "She's in a deep freeze." And that was really weird. So yeah, so
yeah,
I was curious.
Yeah. Okay. So your higher self is the true you, and if you looked at it from a model that included reincarnation, your higher self is in every single one of those incarnations, but you pick up a new conscious mind and unconscious mind.
Okay.
So then if we looked at the bodies, so when somebody passes over, their higher self goes immediately back to the light, back to the source. Obviously, the physical body has physically died, and the physical body is providing energy to the emotional and the mental bodies.
Okay.
So higher self's gone, mental body goes pretty quickly. The emotional body can actually stick around for maybe as much as 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because the physical body provides its energy, if it doesn't get energy from anywhere else, it will eventually fade away and die, unless it can get energy from somewhere else, which is like what you've got with ghosts, for instance.
Okay.
Ghost is that.
Okay.
You got to remember, the unconscious mind lives in the emotional body.
Right.
So therefore, it's got all the memories.
Yeah.
So it will appear to be the person.
Yeah.
Their higher self's actually gone. I had a very, very similar experience to you when and this is before I knew any of this, when my dad passed away. And me and my dad were very, very close. I was sitting in the lounge and my dad spoke to me. A bit like you're saying that your mum spoke to you.
Yeah.
And we had a family friend. He wasn't actually a biological uncle, but we, in the community, everybody's uncle and auntie something. So my dad said to me, your Uncle Brian's not okay. He was taking my dad and taking my mum to the hospital and all this kind of stuff. And he was a foundryman. He was an iron worker, tough guy.
Yeah.
And my dad just said to me, your Uncle Brian's not okay. He's saying he's okay. He's not okay. Go to the off license, buy a bottle of whiskey and take it and drink it with Uncle Brian. So I'm going, okay. And by the way, I'd had a really bad experience with whiskey, so I absolutely hated it. But I did as I was told, went down to the off license, bought a bottle of Glenfiddich, single malt, walked around to Uncle Brian's place, knocked on the door, and Brian answered the door. And I said, my dad says you're not okay. He's told me I've got to come drink this with you. He goes, you better come in then. So me and Uncle Brian finished this bottle of Glenfiddich between us. And previously, the smell of whiskey would have made me sick.
Wow.
I drank it perfectly okay. We drank the bottle between us, and it had no effect on me whatsoever.
Wow.
And then the next day, I'm in the lounge again. My sister was in the dining room, which is where this bookcase is from, actually. And my dad said, go and tell Sarah, because Sarah's my sister, go and tell Sarah I'm okay and I love her.
Oh.
So, I'm going like, what the fuck's going on with next door? Told Sarah that. She burst into tears, gave her a hug, whatever.
Oh.
And then the last time he spoke to me was actually, we had a funeral, we had a cremation, and then we also had a committal to the ground, like 3 events, a bit like the royal families had,
Yeah.
over the last couple of weeks, it was. And the last time my dad spoke to me in that way, because he was buried with his mother and his father in a little village called Warsop in North Nottinghamshire. and it was January. It was terrible weather, and it was very, very bleak. And I just heard my dad say to me, he goes like, "This is like a scene out of a mafia movie," and he burst out laughing, and that was the last thing that I heard from it in that way. It still comes with dreams and that kind of stuff, but
Yeah,
but that's
that's what's happening. Yeah.
this here, yeah. So this is what people, you know, who go to the spiritualist church. A lot of them are doing, the spiritualists are picking up, is the person's emotional body,
Right.
and they will be able to, because the unconscious mind lives in there, they will be able to answer questions about the person's life.
Wow.
So
That's
they
interesting.
think it's actually the person, you know.
Yeah.
But I mentioned one of my other mentors that I had. Actually, I met him before. I met Tad Stuart Wilde, who's very, I mean, hilariously funny. And he would say, you know, if great Uncle Billy was as thick as two short planks when he was alive, don't expect him to not be thick as two short planks when he's dead. So don't bother asking him the secrets of the universe, because if you do the universe, he wouldn't be dead.
Oh, that's really funny.
He will be able to tell you where he's hidden the money in the shed.
Oh, well. Well, it comes in handy then to have that ability to connect.
Yeah, and I've had it with I had it with my uncle Martin as well. That's a story for another time. That was even weirder than the one with my dad. But
I know I get lots of dreams, and I've lost a lot of people that are close to me, and they do come up in my dreams from time to time. Yeah.
yeah, no, my dad does them on a regular basis, but it's, you know, but this was not in a dream. This was like you were saying. It was like I'm just sitting there, and I physically heard my dad.
Yeah, yeah.
As if he was sitting next to me. And this is before I knew any of this kind of stuff. And I was like, well.
Well, I had a really strange thing that happened many years ago. And I was in bed, and my husband's father tapped me on the shoulder. He gave me 3 prods on the shoulder. And that was quite weird. And about a week later, my husband died in a terrible accident. And yeah, that was horrible. And my husband used to love smoking cigars, and every so often I get this whiff of cigars.
Yep.
And there's nobody around that smokes cigars, you know. So
There you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
all these weird things.
Well, you know, so everything is created through these 7 levels or 7 layers of creation. So just because the physical body isn't there anymore doesn't mean that the other levels aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
So that kind of like does create a very different perspective than we taught about when, well, interestingly, with the Queen over the last week or so,
Yeah.
what people have been referring to is that the Queen has passed over, not died.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that dies,
Yeah.
but
You're still connected to the energy.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The emotional energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you, David. Very
right.
helpful. Thanks.
That's a pleasure. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for the question. Sally, any other questions?
No more questions.
No more questions.
No other questions.
I just find this
Lots of people. Yeah, lots of people thanking you and saying it's been a great session. So Lots
I
of
just-
value being gained.
I just find it amazing that we get these kind of questions out of a book about the brain, Think and Grow Rich, written in the 1920s, and all these questions come out of it.
Mm.
Yeah, so I love it. I just love it. You guys asked me some challenging questions. So what are we doing? Oh, well, next week, number 13, which, by the way, just so you'd know, the reason why it was said that number 13 was bad luck is because the number 13 is the number of magic. And so certain people wanted people to stay away from the number 13, in that if you made a magic wand is basically an instrument, a mental instrument that enables you to focus your conscious mind. You'd always make it 13 inches long. So 13 isn't bad luck at all. Is the sixth sense. So I think that'll be quite cool.
So David, Mark Woodhouse would like to know, why is 13 the number of magic? And Susan Shirley says it's not the number of people at the Last Supper then.
No, because I think at the Last Supper there was 12, if I remember rightly, but the 12 didn't include Jesus and also didn't include Mary. So there were 13 people there, actually. But there is some significance to that, most definitely. It's a good job we're doing it on Zoom, not on Facebook, because otherwise I'd be taken down. But Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married and they had children. And how do we know that? Well, we know that because Mary Magdalene washed Jesus's feet before he was crucified, and and she let her hair down to dry his feet. And in that tradition, even in today, in the Jewish religion, only a husband is allowed to see a woman with her hair down. So that's how you know that they were married. And also, just to add a little bit more controversy to the whole thing, she was actually Ethiopian, so she was black, which is where the tradition of the Black Madonna comes into certain Roman Catholic sects, for want of a better word. So yeah, a few things. Jesus was married, he did have sex, he had children, and he was married to an Ethiopian. Other than that, I can't see why anybody'd have a problem with it. As to why the Mark's original question, why is 13 the number of magic? Well, interestingly, in all of the pictures from that Leonardo da Vinci painted of the Last Supper, if you look very carefully, there's actually an M in all of them. And M is the 13th letter. And M signified the secret of Mary Magdalene. In fact, there's a wonderful cathedral in Leicester Square, Roman Catholic cathedral, which has a mural, hand-painted mural on the wall of the Last Supper, painted by Jean Cocteau. And if you look at it, you can see this big M in the middle of it, and that's not the Golden Arches, by the way. It's not McDonald's. So that's the significance of that. And then another magical letter is the letter K, which is the 11th letter in the alphabet. And that's why Aleister Crowley spelt magic with a K, M-A-G-I-C-K, rather than M-A-G-I-C, so that people knew that it wasn't stage magic or stage illusion. So we put a K on the end of it. I feel like Marvin off of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. Got a brain the size of a planet, and here I am running a car park at the edge of the universe. We needed somebody to get all this stuff out of my head one day, you know, actually get it captured, because I've put so much in there. And then when people ask me questions, it all comes back out, you see. Has that brought up any other questions?
Nope.
Okay.
No more questions. I will put the name of the church in Leicester Square in the group for those who are interested.
I can't remember what the church called now. I think it's the Church of Mary Magdalene, isn't it?
No, Church of Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Okay.
Notre Dame de France, RCE.
Okay. But yes, wonderful. And Jean Cocteau was an occultist and thought to be a member of the Siri de Prayon, which is the thought to be the modern day Templars, because the Templars were after the chalice, the Holy Grail, and the Holy Grail was actually Mary Magdalene. They protected the bloodline of Jesus. Yeah. So there we go. Okay, guys. Well, that was a chapter of about 6 pages that took an hour and a half. So how do you do this to me? And then next week is the 6th sense. Book the whole night out. Because who knows what questions might come up out of that. So thanks for joining us. And, again, good session, useful. And again, I know some of you have been referring people into the group. Keep doing that. We've had new people signing up to watch the replays of all of this. And then I'm going to have to get my head around what we're going to do next. What are we going to do after Think and Grow Rich?
We'll have to spend all our money.
I'm sure I'll get some divine providence will come in and put an idea into my head. Yeah. Okay, guys, take care. Have a great week, and we'll see you. We'll see you next week. Same time, same back channel.
Bye, you two. Thank you.